Welcome to the Epic Vision Zone. My guest today has been referred to as a superwoman. She crosses continents, convinces an international roster of clients to move in new directions, and takes care of business and family. She is Argentinian born and the founder, principal, and creative director of Blok Design, and living life fully and in a way that many professional women would find inspiring. Toronto-based Blok Design is well known both at home in Canada and abroad, producing work that is both timeless and beautifully executed. Her award-winning designs work across media and disciplines, including graphics and identity, products and packaging, editorial, websites, and more. Known for her passion for taking on initiatives that blend cultural awareness, humanity, and a love of art to advance society and business alike, her experiences living and working in Buenos Aires, LA, New York, Mexico City, and Toronto have given Blok Design a unique international perspective that is recognized and awarded around the world. Her work is represented in the permanent collection of the Royal Ontario Museum, as well as the Library of Congress in Washington. Her considerable experience includes top global brands such as Nike, Pepsi, Nestle, and the Museum of Modern Art, Miami, among many others. Her work is frequently published in leading books, periodicals, and design blogs, and has been exhibited in countries from Japan to Germany, and recently, or more recently, in the Tamayo Museum in Mexico. She holds an MFA from the Art Centre in Pasadena, and welcome, Vanessa. Oh my gosh, so nice to have you here.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Oh, my pleasure, my pleasure. So have you always been an entrepreneur? It feels to me that you may be a serial entrepreneur. And if so, what attracts you to the life of entrepreneurship?
I think I have. I know I have. I was selling my own drawings at age 5 around the neighborhood. So I assume that makes me a very early entrepreneur. But what truly attracts me, it's always been about just exploring further, seeing further. I'm interested in challenges. I'm interested in finding the spaces in between, and that takes a sort of curiosity at heart. And I think that's what motivates me in general.
So were your parents entrepreneurs as well?
You know what, my father is definitely an entrepreneur. He had his own company, but I think that the entrepreneur is not only that we've learned, it isn't just that my father was an entrepreneur, like he had his company. It was more the way he taught us how to see, like in the conversations we had. And it was always about a wider vision, a more expansive understanding of the interconnectedness of things. And I think that's where, that is the essence of an entrepreneur, is that you're always excited about finding these opportunities or interconnecting social issues with economical issues or market issues or human issues, and philosophy always at the core. When you're in that type of conversation, I don't think you can, everything feels a little tight, structures feel tight. And maybe for me, it might be less about, is my family an entrepreneur, but was I brought up with the idea that rules are there to sustain, but you need to push them and break them to lead. And when you have that in your family, you just want to break free. And I think that's where my heart normally is.
That's wonderful. Oh my gosh, to have that kind of table talk. You know, it really, I think it influences you when you're young, especially. So I can see a lot of that in your work, but also in your personality. And you have been known internationally and recognized and awarded. What is Blok Design to you, and how would you describe the work that you do?
You know, I've always thought about Blok Design as a space that connects, that inspires. I mean, it's always been about the opportunity that the space gives me and the studio and the people working. I mean, we are a team and a collaborative team. We're small to be able to do really creative work, but it's always been about having a playground to push further and explore. And at that intersection where we start finding different mediums, film, architecture, music, that's what makes Blok an interesting space to experiment, because it has that amorphous, it has that porousness to push things forward. And what we do in general is, beyond what we can say is that, we do branding and we do exhibit designs. What we do is truly bring value. And that's what we're interested in working with companies, people, organizations, culture that have value, and then want to sort of explore how to take it further. So that's, I think, what we do. We actually play a lot, and have too much fun.
Right. Well, that's what makes your passion into profits. I mean, it really does come from the heart. And you mentioned in our conversation that you don't take on clients that you don't really like. It's not just the money. It's really, you have to have that connection.
It always sounds like a very comfortable place to do that. But what people don't understand is that you're the one that carves that space. Like, you have to carve that space. So early on when I was starting, I couldn't afford not to take a client. But I knew that the only way I was going to get to where I wanted creatively was to be able to do the work that brought the clients that I wanted to work with. And many times, I turned down jobs that had a big paycheck. But, for me, that was never my motivation. I think when you love what you do, you get paid. And the more you do it, the better you get paid. But the reality is that the payment is a consequence of doing exactly what you love to do. And without that motivation, creativity does not happen. Creativity does not come with a paycheck. It comes with intent. It comes with, it's like a tsunami that is in you that needs to be fed. You don't feed it inspiration, and you don't feed it within that, it cannot keep on growing. So there's very, very clear reasons why I kept, people call it purpose, but I just kept with a philosophy. And the philosophy was, let's just keep on doing the good work, and with good people that I want to be having a great conversation at 3 in the morning. I don't know why I always say 3, but for me, it's a 3 in the morning conversation must just get you to the depth of things, people just, are just there enjoying a good conversation. If I want to be with clients at 3 in the morning, having a conversation about any subject in the world, they're the type of then you forget work and it's humanity. Right. And that's the type of clients that we actually have.
I love that you put, I was remembering what you just said, because you speak in quotes, and I just love that about you. And you said payment is a consequence. And that is so eloquent, because it is a consequence of you providing a service for people that you're connected with. So yeah, very, very profound. So you have a spirit of adventure that injects life into your work and life. And you mentioned that your nomadic spirit has led you to where you needed to go. Have you always trusted your intuition in both life and business? And do you recommend more women do so, and why?
No, I mean, I think we've all learned, I've had a path that took me to many places, and I've had to start again many times. It is, for personal reasons, we had to move from one country to another and start my studio again. And all those experiences are incredibly humbling, but incredibly transformative. I always think that, not that far from the butterfly idea, my name happens to be Butterfly, so I think I'm living up my name. I'm like,
really?
Oh my God, really? Again?
I didn't know that.
Yes, I didn't know it till I figured it out recently. Somebody told me, your name, and I'm like, oh, it makes all the sense of the world. This is why life keeps on challenging me. Yeah. And I think the key is that, we might be sitting here and it seems like we have all these answers. Actually, we don't. The beauty is that we are in a constant quest, and I am personally. I feed from this quest. It's a search that I need from a creative point of view, but I also need from a philosophical point of view. So no, intuition was something that I connected to, but didn't value till much later on in life, when I understood that the best decisions were actually the ones that many times didn't have the perfect answer. Many times they didn't have an answer. That I had to actually be able to ask the question and hold the opportunity for that answer to present itself to me. And it is incredibly philosophical, but to be honest, it has been the more practical. You know, people, there's all these spaces that society wants us to live. You're practical. Practical doesn't mean you go and you grab your coffee. Practical means having the tools that actually serve you to go where you need to do. That also has not only philosophic, but it has real value in the way you move. And I started to understand that the way I moved was about my flow, was about connecting to that intuition. Intuition for me is a porous membrane. It isn't something out there or in here. It is actually a porous membrane that has a knowing. And the more I feed that knowing, the more it actually responds with that knowing, with that inspiration to serve the right decision making for me. And it's in the gut. I know when the client is right. I know when the client is wrong. And when I feel it, and the times I haven't listened, I thought, oh my goodness, I should have said no. I knew it. Sometimes my kindness kicks in or generosity kicks in. I thought maybe I should give him a try. And it actually is a wrong client or it's a wrong decision.
Right. So we all need to listen or learn to listen to our gut, our intuition.
I think we all need to learn to listen and also to understand that you actually need to listen for it to be fed, for it to, you know, if you just listen, you actually have to understand that it is a working membrane of your body. Like we know we make our brain, we read books, we research, and we expand our minds. And so how do we expand our intuition? And that expansion is about giving it opportunity to actually keep on growing and keep on absorbing information that will inform us. The other day, somebody was telling me, a friend of mine, that the connections to the brain, there's more connections to the heart than there are to the brain. And you know, we forget that. We don't actually, I thought that was brilliant because sometimes when we work from there, the brain just needs to make sense of it, not the other way around.
Right. And that's absolutely true. Now with technology, we have the science that's proving so much more. And it is true that we connect more with the heart. So yeah, it really when you look at it that way, and now that we have the science, of course, to prove it, but it puts a whole new perspective on, you know, heart-led, you know, like many women are heart-led. But I'm going to move on. That was beautiful, by the way. And I'm going to move on to one of my very favorite subjects, and yours as well. I'm a huge proponent of imagination and creativity. And you said that artfulness and artful thinking come from play. Now, you touched a little bit on that before, but what do you mean by that? And how can is there any strategies or thoughts that you have to stimulate that?
It's funny, but because I do think that very similar to how we feed our own intuition, creativity is something that has to be in a state of becoming. It has to be existing with you consistently. So, you know, I always tell my kids, you know, it's like an empty vessel. If you feed it the richness, it can give richness. If you don't, there is nothing you can do. But you have to also let yourself go in it. So experiencing everything from the simple things that seem so simple, but actually when you put them in their own space, become extraordinary. Like that, and I think the beauty of the ordinary, that joy that we find in a market, in sometimes the simplest of things. For me, it's the same as traveling or reading a book that, you know, has the perfect phrase. It's not even what it says. Sometimes it's the word that becomes a doorway to an entire thinking, to everything else that you might feed it, from the arts to a conversation, to poetry, to. So my understanding of creativity is to make sure that you consistently are open to finding opportunities versus trying, like letting yourself go through it, letting yourself flow. And through that flow, you discover. When you try to push it, it actually never shows up because there's nothing there that can feed it. And I think it's in the simple, you know, moments of getting lost that many times that creativity is flowing.
Yes, getting lost, but finding your way back. Yeah.
Always, you know,
Yeah.
always.
Always.
But I think that is the cycle, and I think I shared this with you. But again, my father raised us with one phrase. It's still in his emails. When he went digitally, he put it in his email. Which, but you know, it's a T.S. Eliot phrase that says, a quote: "You will not cease from exploration, and at the end of your exploring will be to arrive where you started and see the place for the first time." So if you think about the creative soul, that's exactly it. But it's for life as well. This idea that you don't need to arrive. You know, creativity is not about arrival. It is not about, the idea. For me, the idea sometimes take years. Mm-hmm. And when they click, I'm thinking, oh my God, it took this long. And then the opportunity and the time and the convergence and the contradictions suddenly overlap for the project to take place. But I have been thinking about it sometimes for 25 years. Mm-hmm. And that idea that things can settle in you and you leave them, you let them go a little bit, they stay, they're doing their own little like movement. And at the right point, those are the ones that become the great ideas. People think they're the ones that you've been actually working for the last 25 years.
Yes, they've been percolating.
Percolating is the word. You know, my Spanish sometimes likes to fly into.
I love it. I think it's beautiful because you describe it. Because you know, but yeah, they're growing is what they're. Someone said, because we did talk about failure, and we'll get into that. But one of my other interviews said that failure is fertilizer.
Yes.
It's not failure; it's fertilizer. So it's being put aside for something to grow. Exactly. So that's kind of what you're referring to as creativity. You have that seed of an idea, and sometimes, you know, you say if you force it, it really won't come. But if you let it go, and it's there, but it's growing. And then when everything comes together and the cosmos align, that's when the time is that it needs to bloom. Yeah.
And sometimes, you know, we sometimes forget and conceptualize that an idea is a thing. Idea is not a thing. Ideas are thoughts, emotions, movements. So many times what they're looking for is the diverse interconnectedness that you actually don't have at the time. You're missing something. And because that's what we think. We always think, well, it's a concept, it's idea, it's something that is formed. But actually, it is much more ambiguous than that. But because it's hard to express ambiguity or hold paradox. The most interesting projects for me are always the ones that are in contradiction. There's always a point of tension, of contradiction. And that point where things are not quite clear, finding the balance between those points of contradiction. That's when great art or architecture or film happen, in those spaces in between. But so I think sometimes you're just waiting for these other interconnected elements to show up for this to find a balance, you know, because it wouldn't without it. And sometimes the balance is with contradictory forces. Right.
Oh, that's beautiful. You have to write a book now on creativity.
I've got you writing. Jane. I just feel it as of now, but maybe soon.
Yes, no. So I don't, we've had an earlier conversation, so that's on an aside, but you've moved around and started over several times in your life, and seeing resilience as a virtue means having endured adversities while transforming them into opportunities for renewal. What cultivates a resilient mindset, and what would you say to women with challenges in their business and their lives right now?
I think that the key for me is always to recognize something that is very difficult to recognize at the time, when everything seems like it's falling on you, or when you need to start again, or when things shatter, which is that you actually have a choice. Mm-hmm. For me, that the understanding and the knowing that the choice is yours is the opening of the door to be able to become resilient. But resilience and actually I think happiness comes from understanding that when you do surpass that challenge, it's just you. And that you is the one that brings all the marvels of the world. It's why you see difference. It's why you sense the world difference. It's why you connect differently. Because I think what it makes us is so vulnerable, so fragile, that there's nothing outside that has a perceived value. because we discover exactly who we are, what motivates us, what our purpose is, what truly is the source of our joy. And I think the moment we uncover that, it starts opening to possibilities. For me, it's always been, you know, having to let go of, you know, in some cases, the idea of a studio or some illusion that I had of where I thought things could be. And when I finally do let go, I find myself that everything is much, much more interesting than I could ever imagine.
Right.
But again, I think we you know, it's, and this I discovered not long ago, is that I actually like that edge, the edge where I'm holding ground and where I'm ready to fall off the cliff. And some part of my body and in my, not my brain definitely, most probably my body, my heart, thinks it's gonna fly, although I might just land and actually die. But I think I hold that hope that I'm gonna fly. But in that space where I'm standing yet to leap, still holding, I see further than I could ever see. That is the place I love, creatively, personally. So I'm attracted to challenges because I'm attracted to how far I can see.
Right.
And I went with my kids through the Trans-Siberian train for a month, and we just did it as an adventure of yet another challenge I need to overcome. And as I was crossing Mongolia in the Gobi Desert, and a friend of mine told me, "You're going to the Gobi Desert to go be," and I understood clearly his message. The vastness of that land, which actually had very little, and the clouds that showed on that land, and seeing that those clouds were the only ones that gave dimension to that land. That's sometimes what we need. Sometimes we need those clouds to actually give us the dimension that we need. And then I realized that land was my land. You know, Mongolia was my land. The stars close enough that felt like they were falling. The clouds close enough to see shadows, to see light, and so vast you could feel the world had no end. That actually is when I see further, I'm always standing looking at my Mongolian landscape.
Well, that actually, you just segued beautifully into my next question, but you already touched on it, because we talked about taking risk and becoming an entrepreneur and making changes. And we talked about the perspective of risk and living on the edge. And you said that that's where you see the possibilities, but you also did mention that taking action, you know, embracing that uncertainty, because a lot of us stay stuck. And you said risk is to stay stuck, if you view it that way. So yeah, I mean, I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that, but I know we had a great conversation on you know, the ability to see it as something that has possibilities.
Well, actually, I mean, this is a subject I'm very passionate about, just because it's, again, it was in me, and I was many times, I'm solving it myself, and I ask my questions and I try to solve them by doing. I test them in myself. So, for example, I took the studio to Berlin last summer, which now sounds incredible that we did it, because it took me 4 years to finally decide, okay, this is the year. We might not have all the money we wanted, but we'll just, you know, we're 6 people, we'll just move to Berlin, rent apartments. But what I wanted to prove to myself wasn't just how it felt to work outside in a different environment, which I did. It was actually embracing uncertainty, to put us in the unfamiliar, to get out of the familiar into the unfamiliar and see anew. And I find that, you know, that I like that shift of perspective. I like seeing things from different dimensions. That is part of what I do every day, but sometimes you actually have to act on it. It's not enough to use it in your work. It's not enough. You truly have to act on it and let yourself see what comes from it. Let yourself be uncomfortable. There was a lot of questions that I wanted to ask myself as I was doing this journey, but you have to let it go. So designing uncertainty was what I came up to, this idea that it's not just enough to leave it to uncertainty. You actually have to make space for uncertainty to happen. You have to give yourself the space not to want to resolve everything, not to want to control everything. Because if you don't give that space, then you're not able ever to leave the patterns and the sequences and everything that feels linear in our lives.
Mm-hmm.
And I think living in Mexico, there's so many concepts that I explored in different ways, and I enjoy this. So this is me normally. But chaos wasn't something I was attracted to. If you see my background, it's pretty clean. So my chaos exists in my mind and in my heart. But then Mexico was all chaotic, and Argentina is chaotic as well, but not at the layer of Mexico. Had chaos in culture, it had historical chaos, and it was more than just chaos. It was just layering, richness in the layering, in the textures. So sometimes you need those concepts to get in your heart, so you can then understand where they come from. And if you don't do that, then you can't get out of your comfort zone into a space where you haven't even discovered.
Right. Oh, that's put so beautifully. You're absolutely right. Because if we remain in our comfort zone, because let's face it, it is comfortable. But if we do that, then we're not availing ourselves of what could be. Because beyond that comfort zone could be the next step into possibilities, which could open up a whole new world for you. Yeah.
And then I think there's things, when I came back from Berlin, I went to Berlin thinking, is there a way that I could run a studio and work from many places? Creativity isn't something you just do digitally. You actually, there's an energy in a group and then collaboration. So could I ever do this? Like, next year we go to Mexico to work, or Turkey or South Africa. These are all places we actually had in our list for this year. But it's funny because because what we lived in Berlin, my team got into this situation, COVID, with a completely different understanding. One, of the understanding of uncertainty, because they had never experienced that. Some had barely traveled. To the doing this experience put us in a situation where we had to go into this sort of digital flow much faster. So what we discovered is that having, without knowing, thrown ourselves into that experience where we're living out of a yellow box, more or less, brought us into a knowing to receive this one. Right. And I think that is always what's interesting, is that you never know how it's going to affect or influence the decisions you make later on. We were thinking about, it goes further, we were thinking about a world value-wise and movement-wise that actually arrived. So our thinking was, how can we do, so we were already thinking about new models of studio that isn't digital or collaborative, like that had some type of different paradigm. And so we're just testing models throughout and seeing, okay, what is the new paradigm? And how do you, it's never black or white or gray, or like, it's always a blur. So finding ourselves within those questions are interesting to us.
Yes, absolutely. And you can put me on your list for a new employee when you start moving around.
You and pretty much every creative director of agencies that literally have the top job, they're like, Vanessa, can we go with you? I'm like, I can't afford you.
Yeah. Well, we'll make it work. It's the possibilities are there. You never know.
It was creatively and story and humanity. It paid so much more to us,
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, you're on everybody's top list to work for too. So that'll work out. So you stated a quote from T.S. Eliot that I thought was beautiful, and it went like this: "We do not know what we see what we know." What does that quote, why does that quote speak to you, and what do you feel that it means?
So I think actually that's a Piaget quote. Okay. We do not know what we see what we know. What it means for me is a little bit what we were talking about, that it is so easy for us to find preconceptions and stay stuck within our world, within our parameters, within it's almost, the narrowness of both our lives, our possibilities, the way we interact, and with whom we interact. Mm-hmm. We keep with the same circles, we keep with the same conversations. And what is interesting for me is always being the periphery. It's always being what's on the edges of this. I mean, I think that's why I like the edge. But, you know, we even if I say the word edge, it has a preconception in everybody's mind what edge means. And the only thing edge means, it's actually the spaces we haven't explored. You know, the edge was for the people who, you know, were looking for new land. What was the edge of the world? So those spaces, or the blurs, the blurry spaces that, you know, the frontiers emotionally and geographically that are blurred, those are interesting places for me to see, because from there you see anew, you see differently.
Right.
And I think that I think is what excites us as a studio, excites me as a person, is how can we rethink a society right now, especially given this moment, and rethink, you know, the way we connect, interrelate, and what can we do, not from the place we're at, but from a place we are not at. And it's a very different place, and it humbles you, and it opens you, and I think it just gives to you in so many ways, because you truly are coming to it because you're not carrying the weight of your world. You're freeing yourself to become, or to be free to see things and experience things differently.
Right. Wow, I'm just getting in a whole zone now. I love it. So I want to repeat this that you said in our earlier conversation. I know you've touched on this, but you said, we are hungry souls. Creativity is not a tool, it's a flow. What seems mundane becomes extraordinary. So you touched on it being a flow. Can you unravel that a little bit more? Because what you've done is, for me, when you say flow, you've put energy into it. You put emotion into it. And of course, emotion is energy in motion. And that's what creativity is, how it speaks to me as well. But maybe you could just speak a little on that to our audience.
You know, it's difficult to sometimes express this in this way, but lately I've been doing a lot of like the tornado, like emotion when I talk about creativity. But I think it's because it feels that way to me. It is an energetic motion that keeps on adding things into you. And it is, when you know, there was a project that most probably I was talking about that because there's a project that I'm jumping into it. It has a social element, and it is an intersection where I'm hoping that we're going to be able to create a space for more conversation, more debate, more energy into creativity, but also into city and relevant issues. And when I think about this, which I'm jumping out now, honestly, because I felt that this moment right now needed it. And it's, again, been in my soul for a very long time, but the time is now to start building on this. And it's a nonprofit. It doesn't have economical. When I think about that project, what I think about it is that we need more energies. We need to generate. We need to inspire. And from that creativity needs that enrichment. It begs for it. When you're working within this space, it's an intangible space, and it's an incredibly magical space. And I always feel that we're lucky to inhabit it. And I think it's maybe part of my purpose to be able to show people that don't have the possibilities to see it, that it is a healing space as much as it is a space where you inhabit, where you live. The moment you were able to connect to it, you're actually connecting to nature. You're connecting to the pounding of a lot of the things that make life so incredibly joyful and magical. Because creativity is essence. It's the essence that you find in an object, from the most soulful design to the essence you find in architecture. When an architecture has sound, when an architecture is actually not makes you feel, but it also makes you listen. And that same energy and that same soulfulness you find in a leaf or in nature just by going through the river. And when those things start to connect, it actually is it's a living being, and I always feel like it's a river, and I always feel like it's just flowing through me one way or the other. It's just begging to exist, and it's begging to be inspired. So my motivation is always that I'm hungry to connect to that. I'm hungry to connect to a thinking that is deep, you know, an art piece, a sculpture that its forms are just like, you know, so sensual. I just don't know what to do with myself, because it's just telling me a story that I had never connected to. And that makes me, and that's part of that. It gets you to see the world anew. So consistently, it's just feeding your essence.
Yes, it's beautiful. It's like a journey.
It is, and it's a connection. I think it's about the sensibility by which you connect to the world, and I think we insinuate ourselves into the world with our own sensibilities. And when you're at heart with that, then that connection becomes effortless. And through that effortlessness, we start, I think, bringing more of us, manifesting more of our understanding of the world. And that's, I think, what we do as creatives. We might be working on projects, but we're manifesting the way we feel and we understand the world in many ways. And it's a personal journey, and it's all personal at the end of the day.
Oh yeah, it definitely is. And it's what you make of the journey. So yeah, comes full circle. So in business, you believe we all need to have a healthy perspective of success versus failure. And you mentioned first, we must try and learn lessons along the way, that failure should not be embraced and be allowed to go where it needs. Oh, no, you said that failure should be embraced and be allowed to go where it needs to go. So I loved that viewpoint of that. And maybe you could just speak a little bit more on that.
Well, I have, this is a subject I enjoy very much. Again, I was raised with great parents. I still thank them. So every time something went wrong, they wouldn't even call it failure. They would, suggest that we send a bottle of champagne, because in Argentina, that was the most expensive thing you could ever possibly imagine, to whoever. Was it a teacher because I failed, or was it it didn't matter. There was always a element of thankfulness for the learning. And I think to embrace that idea that you actually should be thankful for whatever learnings come through you, no matter how hard they are. That is something that is seems almost like a cliche, but actually it changes a chip in you. And so my understanding of failure is that I don't actually believe in it. It's not that I want to just embrace failure. I don't ever consider things to be failures, even if the world might. I'm not saying the world might not. I always think that whatever project we have that maybe didn't achieve what it needed to achieve, I'm still pushing it. I haven't stopped. So if it didn't arrive to where I wanted to arrive, I still have a chance. I have a life to make it exactly what I want to do it. And if it's not the first one, it'll be the second. And if it's the third, and if it stopped by any chance at a point, I think it's a stepping stone to whatever other place I might want to go. It's always been for me, again, I think it's that relationship of letting go and knowing that what you learn is what shapes you. And that is part of it. It's not just about, and with the same token, I never see successes to be, oh my goodness, I'm standing here. There's a Chinese saying that says, if you get to the top of the mountain, there's only one step, and that's down. And so I never found it interesting to get to that top. I'd much rather be climbing it, and in that find the energy. And sometimes I change ideas, and I'm like, oh my God, that mountain next door is more interesting, and I might jump and go back to the bottom and start again. But the conceptually, I think that we've gone from failure to success, and then we are teaching everybody, well, you need failure to succeed. Actually, you don't need any of those. You just need to understand that whatever you need to do, you learn. And if this doesn't work out, try again or try different. You keep on learning. And that flowing of those learnings is a much better way for me than that binary concept of success or failure. And the richness that you receive is the one that actually is going to end up taking you exactly where you hoped, or maybe further, or maybe in a place you never really imagined.
You said that in business, many of us get stressed about our next client or our next order. And you said if you come from the right place, there will be a soulful attraction. And that taking on a project is not about the assignment, but about the people and the possibilities. And you mentioned a couple things about, you know, not stressing, because a lot of us, when we're starting, especially entrepreneurs, that's at the top of our mind because of what you just said. You know, there's success and then there's failure. So we're constantly measuring ourselves. And when you said that there's a soulful attraction, just let us know what you mean by that, because I wholeheartedly believe that as well. But for those that are more linear in their thinking and they measure everything, maybe you can give them a little insight into what that means.
So again, this has been a learning for me. This is not something, you know, that you understand this way of moving and working by chance. When you are an entrepreneur and you have a design company that actually has such a philosophical perspective, you risk so much more than if you didn't. Because if I had to, like, you know, it would have been very easy for me to have a very big company that is billing. And I chose the path that was right for me. Not all the paths are good. All the paths are the right path for you. There's people that care. So the reason I say is that sometimes there's preconceptions of why one thinks one way or the other. In my case, I learned as I went, as I had the studio. I've had the studio for 20 years in different countries. That there was nothing I gained by stressing about if I was going to have the money or not the money in the clients. That actually all my intentions and all my efforts had to be put into the work that I wanted to do. And when the work wasn't there, to actually carve the work I wanted to attract the people that I wanted. So since I started in a career that actually was trying to be very linear, I was pushed in, you know, when I was getting my master's degree, it was all about specialization. My take was very much my take on life, which was, I'm actually the opposite. I want intersectionality, I want the expansiveness. But the world was pushing to a different model. Now it's open. I've been working like this for the last 20 years. And again, this has nothing to do with what's right or what's wrong. This has to do with what's right with you, and not always the models out there serve your soul, your heart, your what feels right to you. Within those paradigms, to be able to do philosophically this, I had to let go of these elements of knowing that if I was able to put the energy in the projects that I wanted, the way I wanted, the people that really I wanted to work with would actually be attracted to the studio and attracted to the energy coming from the studio, because we were in the same frequency, because we were doing the work that they needed to be done. In our case, if I always say that our projects are as good as the last project, not my career. It's not about, oh my God, how successful. I actually don't value it. I value it if today we're doing good work and tomorrow we're doing better work. And better doesn't mean the work we did wasn't good. The work we did had a time, had a period, expressed a moment, had needed values, timelessness. But every day I want to be doing work that is relevant, that is important to me, that connects, that has purpose and is human and makes me happy. Right. Actually, you know, and all of this brings me joy. Yes. Because at the end of the day, if it doesn't bring me joy and if it's not a space, I can't show my kids that this is what this is about. And again, the carving of your space is important. So when we didn't have, you know, the clients that we needed, or the clients that step back, when we didn't have, when we had some clients projects that we wanted, and we were hoping to get projects within other spaces, we made the point to literally generate projects that would answer to that space. So we've published books within, you know, one of the biggest sort of environmental challenges in Mexico City, because we had a chance to do it. Or we, you know, and now we are responding to this scenario that we have right now that is political, because it's important to us. So we've always generated our own projects as a way to shape the work we wanted, and to let this flow in a way that would come back.
Yes, that makes complete sense to me. It's putting in that frequency that's going to go out there and attract those individuals to you. Yes. Yes.
And I always think it's about the conversation. You know, you can bring it down to a very simple thing. What are the conversations you want to have? And I want to be in those conversations. So what are the projects I'm attracted to that ask those questions, that are in that conversation that I'm interested in? And in many cases, these are subjects I have no idea about. That's the other thing I think is important, because many times we jump into spaces that we have no experience. And that is, and many times we were asked, but why? If you've never worked on this, that's because we come anew. We have so much experience in so many, but we come to this with all the other experience, but seeing anew. And that gives us a perspective that is so different. But it's what we're excited about, is because we don't know enough about it, that we need to learn again and again.
I love that. Lifelong learners. In fact, that was my question. How important do you feel that is being a lifelong learner?
It's a life journey. Like it's basically a life learner of everything. You know, it's a quest. It's a personal quest. And as somebody said, if you know, you might not find everything, but if you don't start searching, you'll never get close.
Right.
And I always find that if you start walking, at least there's paths that you will encounter. And I think that's part of the unstuck. The unstuck is that when you are pursuing certain projects, and sometimes they look, you know, trust me, I have a pretty ambitious mind. So mine seem to always be like in like very expansive. And sometimes I think, why mine are so.
I love it. Yeah, you gotta go big.
It's always big. The problem is, like, I act in both levels. I can go big and I also act on it. So I think both having those two levels is important, to be able to think big and broad, to go deep, but also to act. But then the acting becomes more challenging when they're so big.
Yes.
But then the question is, you need to do it, because that's where, that is the search. The search is when you get into those energetic projects, and you know that everything in your body is just saying, this is just so right.
Right.
And I think that's what it all comes down to. When you feel it, you feel that this is what your time and your intention needs to pay attention to.
And therein lies the circle of the frequency, because once you get into that flow, you've got that energy within you, which goes out into the universe and tracks back to you what you're looking for, or what your you know, your client or your quest or whatever it might be. Oh my gosh, yeah, it makes complete sense.
I think it works in every level. I think it's porous as well. It's you know, the richness, and we love to separate, you know, business and clients, because the world likes to separate. They like to categorize. Are we in business? Are we in life?
That's linear.
It's linear. This is business. In business, you'd be very surprised. You know, I'm like this in business as I am in life, and I am with my kids and my friends. You know, I might tone some things down, but that's pretty much it. And that's the beauty. It flows right through. You know, it flows right through.
It's the passion, and you can feel it.
But it's dimensional. It enriches every layer, because my clients also want conversations that are much more interesting, in the sense of seeing more dimensionally and seeing further what's happening. It's never about just what they think they need. Many times they come to us with a need, and we realize that is not even what you need. You do not need this. You asked us for this because that's what everybody else is doing, or it's a preconception. And I think that is what's always exciting for us as well.
Yes, it's unpacking. It's, you know, just helping them discover what it is they really need when they...
Actually, it's revealing.
Thank you.
So it's even more profound, because you reveal them, so you can reveal it in very simple things like in a project, but then you reveal essence, and then you reveal identity. And it all comes back to that flow and that connectivity that we were talking about.
Yes, yes, absolutely beautiful. I love it. Well, what is your greatest source of authentic inspiration? Do we need to write a book now?
I almost because I'm highly excitable.
Sorry.
My kids.
That's what I love about you.
But my kids normally tell me while we're walking and they're talking to me, and I suddenly change. Oh my God, this is so amazing. My source of inspiration. There's so many, and I think I'm going to turn it around. I think the reason, because my source of inspiration, the reason is that I feel life profoundly. So my source of inspiration isn't what's out there, but it's the how. It's the fact that because I feel so profoundly, I can get incredibly joyous or incredibly inspired by very little things. That sometimes it's a word in a poem. So we talked about it, but sometimes it's the perfect combination of words. In one case, it was beautiful emptiness, by which that combination, the idea of beautiful and the idea of emptiness, got me into an entire journey of 3 years by which I started to design a house.
Really?
And that was the manifestation of life. So, and it was it was all about small and connectivity. So many times it's a doorway. So I think it's less about what inspires me, but how can I make it? How can I make things that come to me keep on triggering that inspiration? Right. And so that sensibility, that connectivity to me, to be connected to me, then things that come to me just inspire me. And it could be a trip, it could be, sometimes in Vietnam, a woman that had like all black teeth, and smiled, like 100-year-old, was an amazing inspiration to my soul. And it just shifts.
Right. It's life and the world. Yes.
It's life, it's the world, it's gestures. Sometimes it's just a gesture. Sometimes it is a protest. Sometimes it's human rights. In my soul, I'm very much about social justice. So sometimes it's somebody's word for the right cause, as much as it is, a very subtle gesture of generosity that might inspire me.
I feel you see the world through the eyes of a child, because a child is naturally curious about everything. When they're little, you can take them out on the grass and they find a blade of grass fascinating, or they'll look at a tree because they really haven't seen a tree or a flower, and they're just like, "Ooh, what's that?" That's how I feel, because you see the beauty in it, or you feel the beauty of it. So yes, it's just that's how I feel, and that's why I think you are so creative. So I wanted to repeat a phrase that you have that raises the bar for what you do. I think it was in your studio, and your phrase is value legacy.
Yes.
Tell us what that is, because that is very profound.
That was for my kids. And although I use it as my studio. So again, I don't have a blur. My kids know. I mean, I separate my life and my work because of the attention I give my kids, not because they're separate. It's a question of time. But my life, my studio, what I do and who I am, and my family, and how my kids also are part of what I do, has always been important to me. It's not just mommy does this or so for me, value legacy has always been about doing the work and doing the projects that actually mean something to me, because this is the only value legacy I will ever give my kids. If something bothers me, if I have a problem with the world, then I need to act on it. It's not enough to just sign a petition, send money. No. If there's something that I want to do, I wanted to make sure that my kids knew that we actually have that choice, that same choice, that we talked about, to do something. And not because we have to. I am not about cliches. I don't want to change the world. I want to change what is important to me.
Mm.
You know, everybody else can change what's important to them. We're going to have a much better world. It's
Yes.
not about using, using cliches into trying to sell a narrative.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need a narrative, but I need what's important to me to be real.
Mm-hmm.
And that reality for me has one voice, and that's creativity. Through my creativity, through what I do, I respond. And that value legacy is to leave to my kids the understanding that the only thing that is important in life is value. And value can come through friendship, can come through the things you believe, the things you stand for, and sometimes generosity or kindness. But you do have to act on it. And the way I like it, boldly and gently.
I love it. The juxtaposition.
Always.
Yes, that's that tension that you talked about.
That's a tension. So that in that tension, that's where beauty lies for me. Always in that tension, in that paradox, in that contradiction that balances beautifully and sublimely.
So how important is gratitude in business and life?
I think it's everything. I think to be, I love the idea of gratefulness, but I love the idea of grace. To understand, not only to be grateful about it, but to move with grace, to move with the understanding that, there is, you're given so much, you're so lucky for so many things. And all of us have gone through devastating things. And even for that, we, at some point in life, that kicks in to actually be something that we're thankful for. But I think that's something you teach your kids, and that's something you learn from your parents.
Yes.
And again, I think, in my case, my mother always thought while it was raining, it was a passing rain. So we were the only family left while it rained. And then that alone made me always think, well, if we're the only, maybe it's a passing rain. So I always think that we don't give enough value to what we pass on to our kids. And those are the real values, the ones that will give them the true tools to encounter life and be able to navigate it well and healthy. Because nobody takes the challenges. Nobody has, every single one of us has a challenge, a tsunami. So the question is, how are you going to confront it? And what I always tell my daughter is, if it looks like a dragon, go right through, because most probably it's just fog. And maybe, maybe that's true, maybe not, but hey, it's better to think that it's a dragon that you don't want to go through.
Right. Yes, well, that was beautiful. So tell us one thing that isn't on your resume or your bio.
One thing, this came to mind. One thing is, when I was a little girl, my mother, I loved painting. My mother convinced a artist, very well-known artist, a realist artist that never taught children to teach me painting. And we would, my mom would take the bus, we would take the train, the bus. So this ordeal took us an hour and a half to go there. My mom would wait for me for 2 hours in a coffee, now it's called La Boca, which now is very trendy. At the time, it was a very, very, was artistic, and it was not a place that you would be with two girls at night, and 2 hours to come back, an hour and a half to come back. So 3 hours in total to travel to see this painter. And the reason I say is, one is, he never sold his paintings. He was an incredible artist. He could, buy an apartment with one of his paintings, but he never sold them. He kept them because he painted for himself. And there is so many things that I know that between the resilience and the beauty of my mother to make what's important to me important to her. And then an artist that took a little girl at 9, I painted with him for 10 years, till I moved to Los Angeles, and always taught me my first, and this maybe is the end of it, but it's a key, and I discovered it later on. So there you go to the T.S. Eliot. For 8 months, he gave me a canvas, and I painted squares from white to black. 8 months doing that, one by one, without a line, impeccably. So what did that teach me? It taught me focus, it taught me clarity, it taught me patience, it taught me resilience, and it taught me not that long ago, when I came back to this, that life was actually a grayscale. And I never realized till a couple of years ago when I had to go through my own tsunami. Oh my goodness, the first image is that I'm gonna see black and I'm gonna see white, but I'm gonna see all of it, and impeccably and beautiful.
Wow, that's amazing. Only you could bring that around full circle. Vision.
Well, it came back.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful. So I have 4 final questions that are kind of fun, and you're very creative, so I hope you have fun with them. The first one is, if your life were an epic story, what would the title be?
Oh, Hero with 1,000 Faces.
I love it. I love it.
Joseph Campbell. I took it for Joseph Campbell, but that's I threw what came to mind, and that's it. It's mythological, and it has many, many, many faces to it.
Oh, wow. I love it. So what name would you give your character in your epic story?
What name I would give my character? This is a good one. I have to think about it.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to throw the first one that came to mind, but that's because it's a well-known. But now I want to think about it. Give me 2 seconds. I'll come back. Keep on going.
So how would you characterize your epic life?
That was so easy. A total quest. Total quest. This one would be, actually, I don't know the name of my character, but I know she's a warrior. I know she's gentle. I know she's compassion. You know, most probably, you know, actually, most probably, yeah, the name would be too important to throw as is, but I know her character and I know her heart. She'd go for the quest, and she'd go for the full-on, you know, odyssey, like the full-on adventure.
The whole quest. Beautiful, beautiful.
The whole of it.
So if that's the case, I'll just call her warrior. And if you had an epic superpower, what would it be and why?
Ooh, very simple. So if you're gonna call her Shiva, because that's a Hindu.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I don't know if it connects, but I don't know why it came to mind. And if it were a superpower, it would be to see through everything, to not to see through, to see essence, to just see things to its essence. So it would be to see deeply. That would be my superpower.
To see deep.
To find the soulfulness in people and things, to just see the soulfulness. That would be the superpower.
That's wonderful.
In a way, it would be to see truth. At the end, would be to see truth.
Yes, I get it. Well, is there anything else you would like to add to let our audience know? I've got your links on your bio. If there's any special projects you're working on or anything you would like to share, you could let them know.
I'd love to share. We are launching a product line in the coming months. Again, it never was about a product. It's a tableware that we spent 2 years working. And philosophically, the only reason why we did it was because we wanted to explore, because we did it once and it wasn't good enough, and we wanted to do it again. And it was about enough is plenty. That little, sometimes one object that has soulfulness is the only thing we need. And the idea of connectivity, of conviviality, and to share. And again, we're doing this because we wanted to explore and see where it could go. So this is one. And then we have a lot of social, political projects happening right now, which we're very excited and are coming soon. Right.
So can people find, or can they connect with you on Facebook or LinkedIn?
Yes.
Okay.
We have, there's our site, blokdesign.com with a K, blokdesign.com. And then there's Instagram. And the new companies. The new product is going to be called Force, F-O-R-S Studio, coming soon.com. And again, Force, it's a shortened word, but it comes from fuerza and inner force. And it's what guides everything.
Okay, wonderful. We'll keep everyone posted. And Vanessa, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your amazing philosophy, your creativity, inspiration, and the value of imagination with us. And now Vanessa and I would love to hear from you. So go on over to my Facebook page and write a comment. Tell us what your epic takeaway was from this conversation, or in my case, it would be several epic takeaways. And remember, this is where you imagine, create, and build a life and business doing what you love. Until next time, this is the Epic Vision Zone.
Thank you.